Hi.
Record.
Oh, yeah. Record. I think we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the evening showroom. Oh, you know what? We don't have tunes going here, Blake. I usually got all this stuff ready to go.
It sounds,
Dude, we got I hate to start it off like this, but man, we got some exciting stuff going on behind the scenes over here at Human Factors Cast. I'm really excited, dude.
Yeah. Big day, big week. I don't even know.
Yeah, lots of fun stuff. I will I'll announce it on the show tonight.
Sounds
some of it, anyway.
Good.
There's other components to this that will require some time. Cool. But there's some cool things coming out here. Yeah, there's some really neat stuff.
Excellent, man. Sounds good. Are you stoked for the story today?
I am pretty excited. I always love talking about virtual reality. Are you excited for the story tonight?
Yeah, I just gotta get myself acclimated.
Centered. It's pretty cool. There's a video that you should watch. It's on, I think if you look at the show notes, it's like the second or third link or something. We'll include it in the description down below for everyone watching.
Cool.
Yeah, it's the second link. There's a video that shows you exactly what they're trying to show. It's basically how we'll talk about it. It's cool. It's cool stuff, dude.
Cool. Oh yeah, okay. Video. Let's check this out.
Ooh. We hear any of that? Any of the background noise there?
Interesting. Huh. That's rad. Okay. Let me make sure everything is set up correctly, because it feels like it's not.
Yeah. Dude, I gotta set something up because there's a... Can I... Can I feel... Oh, dude. I'm gonna text something to you. I want your opinion on this. I'm gonna text it to you in this chat here. You tell me whether or not I can say this on air.
On the internet?
Yeah.
If you have to ask, you probably can't say it.
Well,
you don't want to get canceled. All right, sweet.
Here, I'll say that, and then you tell me.
I have no idea. What is it related to? Is there one?
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, so this seems like something you know much more about than me. So
okay,
I'll let you make the call.
You know what? It's a reward for everyone tuning in at this time. How about that? So we have a giveaway, although it's not live yet. You have, if you're watching this live or if you're listening on our Patreon, we have a giveaway that will go live soon. And everybody who's listening to this or watching this live will have a heads up. So if you're not already, follow us on our social channels. Join our Discord, our Slack communities. We will announce it there first, and then we will announce it on the show next week. So this giveaway will probably hit sometime early next week. So it gives you some time, if you're listening later or watching later, to jump in to our communities, get, be aware of when it's going to go live. And that'll get you in a little bit early for some of this giveaway stuff.
So just to be clear, where are some of those places that they might be able to find out early?
Yeah, so we're going
live?
Great point. We're going to announce it on Twitter. We're going to announce it on our Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. We'll probably announce it there. I don't know. LinkedIn's a little weird. Maybe not LinkedIn. Should follow us there anyway because we post all our updates there. And it's a professional environment where you can comment and look smart on those things. And then we're also going to post it first and foremost in our Slack and Discord communities. They'll have a couple hours heads up. Then we'll push it to our socials, and everyone will be alerted to it on the next week's podcast. So stay tuned. It's a giveaway. I promise you the prize is really cool. I don't know if I can say the prize yet.
That's pretty sick, though. So, I mean, the point being, it might be a good idea to join our Discord or Slack if you want to
That's
get in
it.
on something like that.
You see what I'm doing? I'm trying to find... There's some good giveaway tech that will, like, validate. I feel like I've done this. Is this it? I think this is it. There's like a giveaway that like hooks into all your stuff and basically validates to make sure that you're following. Because anyway, here's another thing. If you are going to be in this giveaway, you get bonus points or bonus entries for following us on those channels anyway, or joining our Discord and all that stuff. So it will be in your benefit to do that early, if that makes sense, because you're going to do it anyway for the entries. If you're interested in this giveaway, do all that stuff. I'll leave it at that. I don't want to hype this thing up too much. It's really cool. I'm really excited. I was playing around with the thing that we are giving away earlier, and it's very neat. And I will say it will enrich your professional life. I'll say that. That's it. That's all I'm saying. Blake, if I start to bring it up again, cut me off.
Sounds good. Definitely an interesting opportunity, though, for sure.
Yeah.
And as we roll that out, everybody will get more details. Okay, one thing I did see in the Slack, the Discord, is we've got a fair amount of cool intel. Is there any like questions you want to prioritize?
Good question. Yeah, because I feel like we don't normally get to the intel. So I would like to talk about the novelty of VR. So that's okay to keep up top. VR programs. I feel like we'll probably talk about bullet point 2 in the process of talking about it. Let's see here. It's interesting that the learning outcomes are the same in PC versus VR. It's nice to know not many schools will have access to VR quickly. Let's prioritize. So 1 and 2 and 3. Not 3. 5. Bullet point 5. I like those bullets.
Sweet. That sounds perfect.
Magic School Bus is a great reference, and I love that, so we'll bring that in. Thank you, Katie, for the intel.
Sweet. Okay. This is kind of funny. When did we talk about this last week or 2 weeks ago? We talked about some kind of similar transfer of learning. And it feels like it's coming up again in this episode. I can't remember which one.
Transfer of learning.
Yeah, because it's like the context being more immersive, so people are learning a little bit more. It was some story we recently did where it was like it was an obvious transfer of knowledge from just a psychology or HCI perspective. But this sounds like they're showing it in a different format. No, this time specifically with VR, which is kind of cool.
Was it the games improving passenger safety?
Yeah, that's right, because it was the transportation one.
Yeah, this one's kind of a nice mix of like some of the stuff that we've covered before, right? Because we did VR in 207, we did games and learning in 208, 214, and 214. That's it. Yeah, cool stuff. I like it. This will be fun. I'm looking at how our thumbnails have evolved over time. Which, by the way, I sent you a whole discussion on thumbnails late like Saturday night on Discord. I just got bored and was researching thumbnails, and maybe you could read those at some point.
Sure. What was the thesis?
The thesis is that we should show our faces for YouTube thumbnails, especially the "It Came From" repurposed.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. I will say that it will take more time because obviously now it's pretty fast.
Yeah. So I mean, like, add it if you can, but I know that's a time commitment for you. So, but they're performing well, and people find them incredibly useful, and I'm really happy that people find them useful. And
I feel like putting actual faces on there it may or may not, but I feel like it's closer to what you see for a lot of YouTuber thumbnails. So it'll probably get better hits, I would imagine.
Yeah, and here's the thing, Blake, is like there's tools that allow us to A/B test thumbnails, right? So we can try it for the first like 5 ones that come out. It'll just alternate them every day, and then it'll tell us which one has a better click-through rate, and then that will inform which ones we do forward.
Yeah, for sure.
So the story tonight, yes, VR stuff, learning stuff in VR, cool. We need some "It Came Froms" though. So we are
do we have any cool ones? Any ones that are, what do you call it?
Yeah, kinda. Let me say I got 2 that I thought were interesting discussion points. Wanted to run them by you before we actually roped them in. So let's see here. The first one here is UI/UX over developer. This is what's the difference between a UI/UX designer or an app developer / web designer if they do the same work, respectively. Why would you need a developer if a UI/UX designer can do the same? How different is their work at the core and at the end product? I feel like, Blake, that's going to be a big fat...
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that one. How about new hierarchy? UX team under head of PM. They say, my boss as head of design just resigned after struggling too long with internal politics. His job won't be replaced anytime soon. Product designers left behind will be reporting to the head of PM for the foreseeable future. This person knows and cares very little about UCD. I expect problems here. How am I supposed to fight for the user if the person that drives the ideas bordering dark patterns is my direct supervisor?
Oof. That sounds like a trip.
That's a good one. I like it. So we'll pull those 2. Let's see. Do we want to? I'll look for a third one here. Usually we get by with 2, but I feel like lately we've just been pouring through them. So we'll look to see for a third one here. See if anything stands out to me. Who's doing QA in your organization? Oh no, what happened?
Probably the testers.
You're probably right about that.
Actually, speaking of that, it's probably time for me to do another batch of YouTube videos.
Yeah, let's talk on Discord, and let me know what you think about what I sent you.
Uh-oh. Whoa,
what?
I got like completely logged out of YouTube somehow. Anyway, yes, let's do that.
Oh, weird. And oh shoot, I don't know, for whatever reason that wasn't showing. I think there's some shenanigans going on here with internet stuff. Let's see.
How's your internet been? I know you've had some ups and downs with it.
It's so weird. It's like it disconnects every, I don't know, couple hours, but only for a second. And then there's sometimes where it just lags and doesn't connect for hours. I don't know, man. I'm trying to figure it out.
It's kind of funny because it seems like, knock on wood, it usually goes pretty well for the times that you need it for podcast stuff.
I think my internet provider sees the traffic that goes on during these hours and is like, oh, well, we're going to get a call unless we make sure this is rock solid.
They got your number for sure, it sounds like. That's great.
I have minimal Excel skills. Me too. Would you improve Excel skills or go straight for R or Python? This is a skill-based one.
Let's take a dive off the deep end into R and Python. You know what? Excel is just not for me. I really think R or Python is the right move. I say that, but that's totally what I would do now.
Some people learn differently.
Honestly, I think R and Python are super powerful. It just if you don't have any kind of programming background, it'll take you a little bit to get up to speed. But I think I would actually recommend that over Excel.
Really?
You can do a lot of because with R, right? So you can do all the statistical nonsense, but you can also build apps out of R too with some packages like Shiny and other stuff. And just the data visualization control on Python, but definitely in R too. And the connection with JavaScript libraries is nuts. So you can get a lot of stuff done.
Is R free?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So free, just like Python, like Python and whatever package.
I feel like, Blake, that we have differing opinions on this one. And for that reason, I'm almost tempted to pull it.
Pull it! Where's it from?
We'll pull it. This one's from User Experience.
Is it?
Yeah.
What in the world? That's interesting.
I mean, from a user researcher perspective, I think it's very interesting to talk about this bullet point. So, I'm going to pull it. I don't know if we'll talk about it. We'll see if there's another better one, but I actually really like that we have differing opinions on this, and it could be a fun discussion. Let me look to see if we have any other ones. Hey, by the way, if you're watching right now, if you could give us a boop that like button. Hey, Kristen. Thanks for joining us. Boop that like button. It'll help other people find the show. I found out that, Blake, we're not supposed to mention that A word that uses. No, don't say it. If you understand what I'm talking about, don't say it, because
authentication.
No, it starts with ALG.
Apple.
Algo?
Oh,
we're not supposed to say that word because
some
apparently
algo.
The speech to text things detect that stuff. And if you mention that, it is less like it's weird. I went down this weird rabbit hole the other night, dude. Weird rabbit hole.
Yeah. Was that for just YouTube?
It might be for others too. So I want to be careful with it.
Funny.
Yeah, anyway, just hit that like button to help other people find the show. I think that's the best way to say it. And remind me, Blake, we do have to say that in the it came from section, because I think it will be useful. If you find these answers useful, hit the like button to help other people find this. And that way, when you port it to I'm going to add it to the show notes right now.
That's probably a good idea. Because we could also make an end card that's just that. That I could just use.
Find these answers useful.
If you want to do it every time, that's totally fine too. I can just cut it and paste it in different places. By the way, we have a lot of videos on YouTube.
Yeah, we do. There's a lot
of content.
I'm actually really happy with how our YouTube is going. It's performing well. I think the shorts.
Have you been doing more? That's what I was gonna say. More quarters.
Oh, I don't think there's a like button on. There might not be a like button on Twitch. I don't know. Is there a like button on Twitch?
There's not.
Yeah, there's just a follow button on Twitch.
Yep.
You can follow, which I think you already
are. Hit the follow sandwich. It's good for you.
You were about to say something there, Blake. I forgot.
Probably nothing of importance.
Content on YouTube.
Content on YouTube, yes.
What were you saying?
You were saying it was performing well, and then
the shorts.
There we go.
Yes, we're still doing the news shorts, which is kind of fun. Because if you're not a Patreon, you are not getting a list of all the potential news stories that we're talking about. We do those. You would get those if you were to follow our blog. We do have a weekly news roundup that we post out there every week, so you get all the Human Factors news right there. Now, if you are interested in kind of hearing those headlines another way, if you want to like subscribe to them, if you will, you can do that on our YouTube. We do the shorts every Wednesday. You can watch them right in your phone, and they're optimized for mobile. So, yeah, check those out. I don't know. I feel like those are useful for people who may not know or follow us on the weekly news segments. Those are helpful to see what other things are going around the human factors world. Blake, I'm not seeing any other interesting stuff where it came from, so we'll go ahead and keep those 3. I like those.
Cool, that's fine. Yeah. Cool. Blurb is cool. I do want to read through the stuff that Katie put together.
Yeah.
Da-da-da. Oh, that's interesting. I like bullet 1.
Yeah, bullet 1's cool. Do you like bullet 1? So now I gotta find a giveaway tool. We've been using Rafflecopter, but I don't think it's gonna work for us now since we have so many platforms. I want to like integrate as many things as possible.
Yeah, I don't know what some of the other services are. I'm sure you can find something that's analogous to the copter.
Yeah, I think there are some other tools that we can use for. Is it Moobot? Is that? There's one specific one that I'm thinking of that I see all the time, and I don't know what the name of it is.
I was trying to think of the one that I've done most recently. Maybe I can find it real quick. I did one for like a Spirit Box vinyl or something, and it was the same deal, like across all of the various social media platforms.
Yeah, it's like you basically like follow us here, follow us there,
Press all the buttons in every place.
Yeah.
I don't need to be logged into this. Let's log out of that. Oh, that's cool. It's all good.
Raffle Press? Is that?
There you go.
Is that? Let's see here. Well, I mean,
could be spicy.
Maybe Raffle Press is the one that I'm thinking of.
Let's see.
We'll see. I'm gonna look at Raffle Press. Yeah, if you're just joining us, we do have a giveaway coming. I'm not allowed to talk about it yet. But I'm setting it up, and if you want to be aware of what's gonna happen, be sure to follow us on all of our social platforms. You will get notified before everyone else. That's what I'll say. Now, I don't know this Raffle Press. They say, is there a free version? It said there's a free version. I don't see the free version. And they make it hard to get the free version.
Probably. Everybody loves to do that.
Yeah.
About dark patterns.
Dark patterns. Let's see here. Woo Rise. What is Woo Rise? Let's check it out. I will find a suitable giveaway tool.
Sweet. Did we get any replies to the your social thoughts deal?
Yeah, we did. Good question. I'm gonna check Instagram again. Nothing on Twitter, but we did get some through IG, and I did put those in there.
Oh, I see. Yeah, okay, on IG. Very cool.
Let me just make sure. I do want to report the final percentage on that, too, so thank you for that. Appreciate the reminder. Let's see here. Insights, maybe? Where do you... I'm such an Instagram noob. I don't even. Wow. Okay. Results are 50-50.
50-50. I don't even know what that means.
So
we like a poll.
Yeah, we asked a poll. Have you used VR to learn something new?
Oh, that would have been. That makes sense. That's kind of cool that you even got 50-50.
Yeah. Results
expected, like, off in one direction versus the other.
Yeah. 50% yes, 50% no.
Very cool, man.
Cool. Lots of engagement on Instagram. I'd like to see that. And we got quite a few retweets tonight on our social, on our tweeters.
Can't go wrong, man.
And 4 likes, 4 retweets, but no responses. Okay, we'll take it.
Don't want to talk to you about it, but this is good stuff. That makes me laugh.
Yeah, that's what I get too. It's like, oh, this should be known, but I don't have anything to contribute.
Well, that's kind of how I even use Twitter when I do barely use it. So I can't blame nobody.
Yeah, I should have put it in a poll. I should have made it a poll. I didn't even think about that. Next time.
All good.
Sure. Drive that engagement.
Drive the numbers. Jesus.
Yeah. Look, we're 3 minutes out from the show. If you've been hanging out with us and appreciate what we do here, support the show by booping that like button. That will help other people find this content. You can follow us on whatever platform you're on. Support us on Patreon. You can do that too. It's going to be another way to support the show soon. Can't talk about that either. That'll be a next week announcement. There's going to be a lot of announcements next week. I feel like there's a lot of admin notes today too. It'd be a good time.
Absolutely.
$58. Oh boy. Trying to see if there's any other interesting things we can pull into the show tonight. I don't see anything. All right. Yeah, I think we got a pretty robust show notes tonight this evening.
Yeah, making it work.
Shoot, remind me when we're done. I need to make the card and YouTube recommend the VR perception of time. VR time perception. As a recommended video. I think this goes very well with it.
It does. It pairs well with a nice VR. I can't remember the name of the episode.
Okay. Well, we got some chat going here. Andrew Woods.
Mateo, you're a legend if you're on Twitch walking around campus. That's pretty crazy.
All right, everyone. We're going to be right back after this little intro, and then we'll be back with the show. It will be a good time, so stay tuned for that. Let me just change this over so that way shows our little names there. Yeah, we'll be right back. Blake, you got Audacity up there?
Yes, I do.
Wow.
And it's ready to go, too. Oh, okay, look who it is. Look who it is this week. Wasn't me. Where's the scoreboard?
Oh boy! All right, get that scoreboard up and ready. You know what I also didn't do is I didn't kill any of my apps. need to do that because otherwise things run sluggishly. So give me a second. I'm going to try to do all this stuff at once, but we'll be right back right after this short intro.
Bye, y'all.
No, not bye. We'll see you in a second.
Welcome to Human Factors Cast, your weekly podcast for human factors, psychology, and design.
Yes, hello. It's episode 216 of Human Factors Cast. We're recording this live on August 26th, 2021. I'm your host, Nick Roome. I'm joined today, as always, by my good friend and yours, Mr. Blake Arnsdorff.
Man, Nick, you said 216, and for some reason, I couldn't even believe it. How you doing today, man?
I'm good. 216 episodes later. Look, we know you're here for the news, but we have some programming updates that we'd like to share with you all before we get into everything. I'm going to talk about this because there's a lot going on behind the scenes here at Human Factors Cast. I want you all to be aware of it. So first and foremost, we have a digital media lab, if you're unaware. And I say that, I said it last week, I'm going to say it again this week. There are some really exciting opportunities if you want to join that lab. If you're a student looking for some more real world experience, if you're an early career professional looking to do some extracurricular activities, if you're, a PhD who's been in the business for 30 years, we're welcoming to all types of people in the Human Factors digital media lab. And there's, like I said, some exciting opportunities coming up. Speaking of which, this kind of rolls into that. We know you all like conference coverage, and we're adding a new one to our list. So we've been invited to the Neuroergonomics Conference in 2021. This is from September 11th to the 16th. We've been invited. You'll have coverage. What that looks like, we're still ironing out the details, but there will be coverage on it, and it'll be really exciting. We'll put a link below for you all to check out the conference yourself. And I think the last bit of information here is the deep dive on the Olympics. We mentioned that a couple weeks ago. It will be coming out this week. There's been a couple delays with that, but it will be out this weekend on Saturday. So look forward to that. And then we'll be back to the regularly scheduled deep dives next week. More announcements next week. But follow us on all our social channels and all that stuff if you want to be alerted a little bit earlier on that stuff. That's all I'll say. If you've been listening to our pre-show on any of the streaming platforms, you kind of know what's in store there, but that's what we'll leave it at there. But we know why you're here. You're here for Human Factors News, so let's do it. That's right. This part of the show is all about Human Factors News. This is where we talk about everything related to the field of human factors. This week, it looks like you got some VR in my education. Blake, what is the story this week?
This week, we got researchers demonstrating the effectiveness of 3D visualization as a learning tool, or as VR, as Nick mentioned, VR. So researchers from the Neuroimaging Center at NYU Abu Dhabi have developed the UW Virtual Brain Project, producing unique, interactive, and 3D narrated diagrams to help students learn about the structure and function of perceptual systems inside the human brain. A new study to come along with this development is looked at how students responded to learning lessons, both on desktop and in virtual reality, offering new insights into the possible benefits of VR as an educational tool. Through the various experiments, researchers found that participants showed significant content-based learning for both devices, with no significant difference between PC and VR devices for content-based learning outcomes. However, the interesting part comes when you think about VR, what did exceed PC in terms of achieving experience-based learning outcomes. In other words, VR was found to be more enjoyable and easier to use by students. So, as a direct quote from some of the researchers, students were more enthusiastic about learning in VR. However, the findings did indicate that learners have similar access to learning about functional neuroanatomy through multiple platforms, which means that those that don't have access to VR technology are not at an inherent disadvantage. The power of VR is the ability to transport learners into new environments they may not otherwise be able to explore. But importantly, VR is not a substitute for real world interactions with peers and instructors. So, Nick, this is an interesting one because we've definitely talked about VR on the show, talked about various, impacts of learning in different modalities. But it's cool here that now we're seeing it's not just a content only kind of change we're seeing between PC and VR, but we're actually seeing people just enjoying the learning experience a little bit more. Now, VR is something you're very well versed in. So let's get your take here on kind of what you think might be going on.
Yeah. Let's even just back it up and see what everybody else thinks. So I'm going to get right into social thoughts at the top here. So the thing that we asked you all on all of our social media channels is, have you ever used VR to learn new things? And then if not, what applications do you think VR would excel at? So we asked that question. We did a poll on our Instagram. We had a response of 50-50, 50% yes, 50% no. So I'm surprised that the percentage was that high. But, the more I think about it, in our field, training is huge. And so, you think about some of the other stories that we've talked about on the show before, training in VR. I can very easily see, like a surgeon training in VR and thinking that is learning, which it is, right? It's learning how to do an operation in VR. And this story itself is just kind of taking a step back and saying, okay, well, even without doing a procedure, a step-by-step procedure to perform something on something, you are still encountering those learning effects by using virtual reality as a tool to get people to understand the concept. I do want to briefly touch on, before we go any further, there's the image that we used for tonight's show kind of shows a view from inside the headset. And what you're looking at there is a brain with a screen in front, and it's in VR. And this is actually a video that the researchers put out. It actually goes through how, it's interactive in the sense that you can walk around this brain. You can see the eyeballs linked to the occipital lobe, through the nerves and everything. And it's all very, very interactive. So you can actually like look at it from various views, and it's communicating things that are hard to see. You can't look inside the brain. You can't see these synapses firing. You can't see the processes going on. And so that's what the effectiveness here of this tool is. And I think that makes sense. I think the idea with using virtual reality as a technology to encourage learning these topics that are traditionally harder to learn makes sense to me. I'm glad there's research out there that is looking at it. I don't know. What's your read on this, Blake?
So I think it makes intuitive sense in some ways, but I would wonder if as time goes on, if you do more, application or interaction based virtual experiences for learning, if we would see them overcome kind of like PC being, neck and neck with VR content based learning outcomes. I think depending on the level of schooling, yeah, totally. VR could be a very interesting medium to get students engaged because it's a newer technology. It's a different way of experiencing things. And definitely like being able to see processes in the brain in a way that you can't really get out of a textbook, and you may not be able to feel very immersed in even in a like PC learning experience where you could essentially see a similar video but not have it be something you could walk around and kind of get your own perspective on, or not to the same extent as you can with the VR goggle side. But I do think the researchers make some interesting points in that it's not really meant to be a real world interaction substitute with your peers and your instructors. But I think after, in the world we've lived in for, over a year, I guess, with kind of COVID separating things out, I feel like VR headsets and a virtual reality experience could actually be a way to really bring people together in the classroom more so than, the limitations that Zoom brings or something like that. So there's definitely a lot of power of the tool that I would likely bet, if I was a betting man, that over time VR will become much more kind of immersive, and you might see even more content-based learning outcomes for students in the classroom, and then much more so, I would think, in the field, kind of like you mentioned with different surgery techniques.
Yeah, so that's an important distinction. Let's talk about the differences here between PC learning and VR learning. And from my understanding is that they kind of showed them the same thing. You can navigate in a virtual environment on PC. Um, However, the VR aspect of it, because it's more interactive, it kind of became more enjoyable, and students are enthusiastic about it, easier to use because you no longer have to worry about moving a mouse and keyboard and all the input um, messiness that comes with that. It's intuitive because you're wearing a headset and your head is then controlling your view as it would in the real environment, and that's kind of the advantage there, right? So you can actually like duck down and look under the brain to see how everything's going, and as opposed to like trying to maneuver with mouse and keyboard. I think that is kind of the difference there. I'm curious though. There's Katie in our Slack asked a question. Is VR more enjoyable because it's still new, or is there a way to make PC learning more enjoyable? So how do we equate these two, right? What's your thoughts on that, Blake?
So I thought it was interesting, definitely in a good sense, that they found between PC and VR that we're still getting those content-based learning outcomes that are equivalent. So when we talk about content-based learning outcomes, the assumption is that they're actually talking about what did somebody learn. If I ask them a bunch of questions after going through this VR or PC lesson, were the students able to retain enough information and do comprehension well enough that they could answer, test questions, quiz questions, type of thing. And so actually from the VR side, I may have expected it to be a little bit less so than the PC, just because of kind of exactly what Katie has said here. It's a novel experience. It's something new to get used to as well. So I would imagine you get probably just like any kind of PC training, like almost some tutorial or some walkthrough of how to use the technology. But in terms of can PC games be more enjoyable, and is VR kind of a way to kind of help push that? I think that's a great point, is that what can we really instill, or what can we make a comparable experience from what's making VR enjoyable? And that hopefully is a line of research that's still being actively sought after by researchers, is really digging into a little bit more of why is it an enjoyable experience to learn in VR? Is it just because it's new? Is it because of the interactive mediums, or can we bring some of that more kind of 360-degree view of the brain in this case to PC learning platforms? Because I do think that one big barrier here is, how do we get VR headsets accessible to a lot of different people, especially in the school setting? But from your perspective, Nick, I mean, do you think that there's a way to make the two equivalent, or will we ever really be able to bridge that gap of immersiveness on the PC side once we've experienced, VR in the headset format?
I think that's an interesting question. I think the interesting bit to me here is that I'm going to reread this quote. You read it in the blurb, but I'm going to reread it because I think it's important and I want to hammer it home, right? Rockers says, our findings indicate that learners can have similar access to learning about functional neuroanatomy, the brain thing that I talked about, through multiple platforms, which means that those who don't have access to VR technology are not at an inherent disadvantage. The power of VR is its ability to transport learners to new environments they thought they might not otherwise be able to explore. But importantly, VR is not a substitute for real-world interactions with peers and instructors. So I do want to revisit this because this quote is saying a lot here. Basically, what they're saying is that VR, just because it was more enjoyable to use, just because it was a little bit more intuitive, doesn't mean that they learned any better or worse, right? I think there is something to be said about the enjoyableness of learning. There's something to be said about making learning fun and engaging. And that might be what VR does well. And so it in terms of navigating on a computer and trying to see a virtual environment on a computer, especially now, a lot of the younger generation are trained in how to navigate virtual environments because video games are so prevalent, because Other types of experiences are now virtual. And so there's less of a learning curve for them. And so if you put a virtual environment in front of them, they're going to have an easier time navigating those than an aging population, for example, right? So I think these virtual environments and learning in VEs are going to be really important in the future, especially for some of these more abstract concepts or concepts that you can't normally see, right? That's why they're using neuroanatomy in this example, is because you have a brain that you can't really get inside of, you can't see it. They're using these virtual environments to simulate that. Now, do I think that your question was with regards to, can we make PC as good? I'm paraphrasing here, as good as VR. I think it is, right? I think the interaction method changes how effective learning can be, right? Because again, once you get that enthusiasm, then learning is fun, and that's shown to make things stick longer, right? That's kind of my thoughts on it.
Yeah, so with their quote, I kind of don't agree with them. I do think that if you're unable to, like, if VR really provides more enjoyable experience across a big enough sample size, then for me, that could be putting some people at a disadvantage. Because I definitely remember being in school, not really liking a lot of the topics I was learning about. And so it made school a lot harder. It was like not taught in an interesting medium. At that time, I didn't really have, a whole lot of PC based anything besides various like gaming classes I took early on in, high school and stuff like that. So I do think that there is some disadvantage there, in that if we can get learning to be more exciting and more, in some ways, accessible potentially for people, that's awesome. And that does have a powerful leverage to like keep people either growing in the curriculum they're in, or just continuing to learn even outside of school. One thing that comes to mind with like, how do you really strike this different balance between PC learning and VR learning, even though we're seeing from the content side that it's very similar or comparable? I think one thing that might be worth considering is, what can we do to make, I guess, PC learning maybe more interactive? So what can be done to either keep people engaged or have it feel maybe more like a game, as if you're like, doing various things for the neuroanatomy class to keep you, either going through a bunch of different steps and keeping you physically engaged through like mouse or controller actions, but also like answering questions and things like that. But I do think the best part here is that we're seeing there's no big difference between the two in terms of what you're learning. But the power to be able to make, learning more fun is really important to me anyway. But nonetheless, I think it brings up the bigger question of like, okay, if this ever starts to demonstrate that it's a viable tool for learning in the classroom, how do we really start getting this into school systems and all sorts of stuff like that? So it's definitely becomes a very complicated problem, I would imagine, the more that researchers study this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I do want to talk about briefly, you mentioned what can we do to bring PCs up to the level of VR. And I think there's a couple things, and of course, I'm going to separate this by or I guess disclaimer this by saying it may not necessarily be cheap or inexpensive to do, but things like adding gestural based interactions to these virtual environments on a PC might do something, right? I think when you're thinking about VR, you're moving your head, you're navigating a virtual environment, you're looking around. If you have at least some way to manipulate the virtual environment in a way that's analogous to how you might do it in the real world, right? Like, let's say I have an object in front of me and I'm using my hands to move it around. If you have a gestural based interface using a webcam and advanced AI to detect what your hands are doing and how it maps to the virtual object, then you might be able to, move that thing around and see it in different ways without necessarily compromising the interactivity or intuitiveness of the design, right? If you can reach out in front of you and kind of pretend like you're moving the thing around and see it actually move on the screen, hold it in your hand, view it over here. And then there's also, holographic displays as well, which might be, again, futuristic looking, but I can see something like that where, again, you have like an Iron Man display or Star Wars hologram where you can actually manipulate it by touching it and looking around, or if you have it in a 3D space, right, where you have a holographic display, you can do that with glass and mirrors. And really, that's all you need for something like this, where you project it onto those angled glasses and mirrors, and you can walk around and see the same thing in a real environment, but the 3D object is projected into the real environment. That might be another way to kind of close that gap between VR and PC learning. And I know I'm getting kind of out of the box there with the holographic display, but I think bringing that intuitiveness of interaction to the PC version could be one way to bridge that gap. Now, I want to ask you, Blake, what do you think about the VR application itself? Like, using VR made it easier to use or more intuitive for the users?
Sure. So I'd imagine, depending on the VR headset that you're using, but I would imagine since it's more potentially up to date, like it's more recently made, there's been thought gone into, okay, what about the interactions that need to happen, or changes in view that need to happen for this specific anatomy class. They've really been thought through. So there would be a lot of ways to make it feel for a user that's going through this course or going through this program, let's say, that would just make it kind of feel a little bit more streamlined or intuitive than maybe like clicking through a bunch of different slides or trying to navigate various diagrams and things like that. Also, I think another thing that might make it easier to use is the fact that it's because these were basically like narrated classroom curriculum stories about specific parts of the brain, how the anatomy and chemistry works within the brain itself. So I would imagine like being kind of stuck and not being able to be distracted by your own classmates or anything else going on in the room around you besides this one thing that you're trying to learn about could really have a lot of benefits in terms of like immersing you, but also like as a young mind, maybe reducing any distraction that you might experience outside. So I think that those few things put together could really just make for an interesting learning environment, because in traditional school, like there's a lot of things going on. Whereas
you might be looking at your phone, or
I mean, you could be doing a plethora of other things, messing around with things on your desk, or like passing notes with your friends, or making jokes or whatever it may be. So something like this can really focus your attention. And I know in a world that I think we all are kind of in a constant battle for our own attention, this could really kind of focus you in good increments to help you learn things quickly, or at least stay kind of engaged.
Yeah, I agree. I want to shift gears just a little bit, and I want to start talking about like the future applications of this, because I think we have a pretty good understanding of why VR is as effective as it is here, and kind of the general gist of the story. I want to move into kind of speculation time, or application time, I think is more applicable, right? So I want to get back to the social thoughts. So we did ask, what applications do you think VR would excel at, specifically for learning? And we got a couple responses here. There was one that asked to be remained anonymous on Instagram here. It says, Google Maps would be useful to learn about spatial relationships. For example, military operations with complex terrain. So this would be, I feel like that's a little bit borderline training, but I think that's a great point, is that if you are going to a new environment where you need some awareness of what's going on in spatially relative to you, that could be incredibly useful, right? I think learning about the geography of a planet could be kind of cool to experience in VR, right? You can cut away the layers of the earth and see it, rather, from where you're standing, and not necessarily have to look at it in a textbook. You could see that and what it's actually doing live, or some simulation of what it's doing live. I think that'd be a very cool application. Sims Dami on Instagram also says job training. I think we talked about training quite a bit on the show in terms of VR and what it can do. I think training is learning, right? It's learning how to perform an action to perform a job. So I think these are great answers. Blake, can you think of anything else here that you want to add to these two?
No, I think these are really great observations of how VR could be useful, and they're all very related to learning itself. I mean, based on this article alone, and then really your description of like how we could enhance PC stuff to make it, more interactive. I really think there's an opportunity for companies like Oculus to get involved in research like this, to start trying to, provide schools with VR headsets, because what you described, there's a lot of technology that would have to be developed or created that sounds more like it would be cheaper for companies to donate headsets to, high schools or colleges or whatever, than creating kind of brand new types of interaction methods, although that has benefits in and of itself. And I know one really big kind of application space now is like game learning. And so that's where like there is a lot of opportunity for game developers that are, maybe not working for a AAA studio, but they end up doing, building different types of learning games. So doing this through VR could be a really interesting way to kind of help enhance students' ability to learn and different types of curriculums they can experience early on, before they even get to college. So I think overall it has the capability to really transform the things how we think about school now and what it could be in the future.
Yeah, I agree. I want to bring up one more comment that Katie made in our Discord here. It can also be great for Magic School Bus like experiences. So things like visiting space, shrinking down to the size of a bee, becoming a drop of water that goes through the water cycle, exploring the digestive systems, things like that. And I think that's a great comment. I think it is those kind of abstract experiences or abstract things that happen but are not easily observable that are incredibly useful for some application like this. I do want to say, if you are interested in sharing your social thoughts with us, please follow us on all of our social channels. We usually post them on Twitter and Instagram to get your thoughts. And we'll read them here on the show. So we do that every Thursday when we know what the story is. Blake, I want to wrap up here. Any other closing thoughts on using VR as a learning tool?
I really hope that they try and teach complex physics subjects through VR, because I that was something I really struggled with through a lot of my engineering courses, was visualizing how various formulas actually worked. And so my best tutor was like always providing me with a lot of examples, or we would draw stuff out on the board. So I can imagine the visual medium that VR lends itself to and the immersion that it provides. Learning kind of how physics works could be a really interesting foray, or a way to like get that kind of ingrained in somebody's mind. What about you? Any closing thoughts for this VR story?
Not for me. I do want to read one more thing from Katie, because it's that cool, and I do want to say it. So I could see learning in VR being great for language learning. You could interact with non-player characters in a world that mimics the real life experiences of talking with people who are native speakers. I think that'd be a really cool application. I think there's a ton of really neat applications that this could be used for. Obviously, VR nerd over here, so if you think about virtual environments and applications for VEs, you can really, like, the sky's the limit. You can do anything as long as you can create that VE. You can put somebody in it, and when it comes to teaching those experiences, I think there's a lot of unique opportunities that maybe we're just on the cusp of discovering how to effectively use VR as a learning tool. So that's it for me. I just want to thank our patrons for choosing this story this week, and thank you to our friends over at NYU Abu Dhabi and the University of Wisconsin for our news story this week. If you want to follow along, you can join me on office hours every Monday now at 4 p.m., where I find these news stories. I do post the links to the original articles on our weekly roundup on our blog. You can also join us in our Slack or Discord for more discussion on these stories. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back to see what's going on around the human factors community right after this.
Human Factors Cast brings you the best in human factors news, interviews, conference coverage, and overall fun conversations into each and every episode we produce. But we can't do it without you. The Human Factors Cast network is 100% listener supported. All the funds that go into running the show come from our listeners. Our patrons are our priority, and we want to ensure we're giving back to you for supporting us. Pledges start at just $1 per month and include rewards like access to our weekly Q&As with the hosts, personalized professional reviews, and Human Factors Minute, a Patreon-only weekly podcast where the hosts break down unique, obscure, and interesting human factors topics in just 1 minute. Patreon rewards are always evolving, so stop by patreon.com/humanfactorscast to see what support level may be right for you. Thank you, and remember, it depends.
Remember, it depends. Huge thank you, as always, to our patrons, and especially our honorary Human Factors cast staff, Michelle Tripp. Patrons like you keep the show running. You keep our lights on. Thank you so much for your continued support. If you want to become a patron, check it out. There's a lot of cool things up there, including a little bag, a reusable bag you can get as a patron. You can become a show sponsor if you want to do that. There's some pretty cool things. We're always giving back to you all, and Human Factors Minute, of course, always never fails to disappoint, even for us. Like we listen to it as listeners because we produce a bunch at one time, and then it comes out and we're like, oh yeah, that's right. That's something that we can learn about. And we're always reminded. So go check those out. All right. So I think it's time for us to switch gears and get into this next part of the show.
It came from.
It came from this week. It's Reddit. It's all Reddit this week. This is the part of the show where we search all over the internet to bring you topics that the community is asking about. If you find these answers useful, give us a like wherever you're watching. Help other people find this content. All right, let's get into it. The first one up we have here is UI UX over developer. This is from Twa8U on the user experience subreddit. They ask, what is the difference between a UI UX designer and an app developer / web designer if all they do is the same work, respectively? Why would you need a developer if a UI UX designer can do the same? How different is their work at the core and end of the product? Blake, I'm really interested in your perspective on this. What is the difference between a UI UX designer versus an app developer or web designer?
Yeah, so let's go through that. I feel like B, I'm going to struggle with, but A, I have some concrete ideas. So for UI and UX, I know it's been a traditional mainstay. It feels like to kind of see those like as slash titles for a lot of people. But I think nowadays it's they're much more considered kind of very specialized parts of the process, if you will. UI, user interface. That really kind of tells you where the focus is. It's very much tends to be on some of the visual design aspects, some of the maybe the deep detailed interaction design will even come with that. But a lot of the times you're talking about like we've left the UX research and upfront phases to get to a more polished design. And that's where a lot of times a UX designer might hand off concepts or work to a UI designer to help start building things. Another place that I see a lot of kind of UI designers working in, depending on the company and depending on their specialty, is focusing a lot on some of the branding aspects of developing branding or helping people redesign their entire brand. So a lot of like a big focus on visual design. UX designer, again, this can be kind of a hybrid thing, but a lot of times this for me is much more focused on some of the upfront user experience research all the way up until maybe some of the first medium fidelity wireframes. So understanding really user needs and translating those into initial designs. That's really where I see a UX designer living. Now, in terms of the difference between app developer and web designer, I think it depends on what those two titles really mean to you. App developer can be very, very different from web designer because there are specific languages that are very much focused on app development. So hence that is a specialized title. There are exceptions, of course, with things like React Native, where you can build in a much more web-based framework in order to create stuff that's going to be mobilely accessible both through like Android and iOS. But I don't think that's the crux of this question. I think web designer, the main difference there is maybe somebody who focuses on only creating designs or building things for the web. So a lot of times you might see this nowadays as a front-end engineer or front-end developer who focuses on maybe creating websites or web apps in kind of, let's say, web-related technology in like HTML, JavaScript, CSS. And they really stick to, also dealing with some of the responsive design components, which may be why there's confusion between app and then web design, because there is a little bit of an overlap in responsiveness. But the thing that I wish, and again, this is my favorite part of the show, but it always leaves me wanting to ask more questions, because ultimately the question kind of stems into the next part saying they do respectively the same work, right? Well, in a lot of ways, I don't think that's true. So I would think the the second question that's embedded here is, why would you need a developer if a UI or UX designer can do the same thing? Ultimately, I think that there is kind of a movement of people that are focused in design or focused in front end engineering, being more savvy on both sides. So learning a little bit of design, learning how to code. And so you see a lot more hybrid kind of job postings than you used to under like UX engineer. But I do think that the two or three roles, depending on your perspective, are very much needed, because developers at the end of the day are the people who are going to take a design and create it and make it real within the technical constraints and budget and timeline that are available. So although you could have like a UX designer who knows how to code or understands code, or a UI designer with the same skills, ultimately having a developer can be the one way that you're actually going to make this design real in most cases. But at the end of the day, I think the core difference is they just have different specialties. I think that there is value and benefit of each one of those roles understanding various aspects of knowing how code works or knowing frameworks that are being used, but also understanding design and user needs. So although they have different jobs, I think they have to work pretty harmoniously together for us to get some of the awesome products that we have today. And that was a mouthful. Nick, try and bring us home. What do you see as the difference between these various jobs, and are they doing the same thing?
Yeah, I love it when we approach a question very differently, Blake, because I think what you approached this question was like basically describing an ideal team and idealized roles, when I think it's, I think in practice it's a lot messier than that. And what I'm thinking that this person is asking here is that they have a lot of similar skills as this other person with a different job title. And they're asking what those idealized job responsibilities should be. Now, I think if they do share a lot of the same responsibilities, I think that was probably a hiring manager's poor decision, because they crossed over too much. I think you did a great job, Blake, of laying out kind of what the idealized roles are. And kind of like an ideal team of having a UI designer, a UX researcher, a prototyper, a web developer, some sort of manager for that whole team that acts as the glue to kind of make all of them cohesive together. I think that is an ideal team. I think an ideal team is 5 people. I think it's a UX researcher that interacts with a UX designer. So you have the person who does the research, you give that to somebody who interprets the results and turns that into like a wireframe or mock-ups, and then you give that to the UI designer, and then they make it pretty. And then you have I'm that sounds very pejorative when I say they make it pretty, but they do a great job of making the look and feel. Maybe not so much the feel. I think that's more UX. Anyway, they give the look of the product, and then that whole package, you have like some interaction design from the UX designer, and the stuff from the UX designer, the UI designer, then goes to the app developer, the developer in general. And if you want to add a perfect scenario, you have some prototyper in the middle of that takes all these concepts as they're being worked on and iterates on them. And then you have the manager that kind of acts as the glue. That to me is the perfect setup. But a lot of teams don't necessarily have those resources. So oftentimes you'll be sharing responsibilities. So you might be a user researcher and a UX designer, where you then interpret your own research and provide recommendations for, content layout, user experience, that type of thing based on what you know. And that's what human factors a lot of the times is, right? So long story short, if 2 people are doing the same job, you need to have a conversation, because you need somebody else to code that thing up. And if your role is like user experience person, then there's 2 of you doing the same work. That's my thoughts on it. All right, I'm going to get into this next one here. This one's called New Hierarchy, UX Team Under Head of PM. This is from Remy Smith on the user experience subreddit. My boss, as head of design, just resigned after struggling too long with internal politics. His job won't be replaced anytime soon, and the product designers left behind will be reporting to the head of PM for the foreseeable future. This person knows and cares very little about user-centered design, and I expect problems here. How am I supposed to fight for the user if the person who drives ideas bordering dark patterns is my direct superior? Should a UX team not be a little more independent, same level as product management? Blake, how do we tackle this problem?
Yeah, this is a really hard one. And it's kind of funny how this show sometimes mirrors real life. Because a friend of mine just experienced a very similar problem. And so it's funny that this is kind of happening in very much the same way. But the reality here is, and I don't know if this is really going to be a popular answer to this, Nick. This may not be the place for you, because at the end of the day, if your boss that was the head of design left, you understand that, let's say that person was actually doing the job in a good way. They were fighting for UX or fighting for, getting user-centered design to have its own 2 feet within the company, but not getting very far. This just may not be a place for you to really learn and grow in. But at the same time, what could you do outside of it? One thing that I would suggest is actually having a meeting with your boss, the head of design that left, and asking, if you don't know all the ins and outs of the internal politics, what they did in their time there to try and move the ball forward in the UX or UCD court, because that will tell you what things may not work or what things to maybe try differently with your upper management. I mean, one thing that I know we've talked about on this show before is sometimes it becomes you have to prove it to other people type of situation. So you get in this space where you basically have to be continuing to evangelize UX or UCD or human factors within the company, but you may also just have to be doing a pretty good job at showing the impact that you're having through whatever design activities you may have going on, whether it's UX research activities, if you're actually impacting development and design. You've got to show and be able to communicate that ROI up the chain. It does seem a little odd that there's nobody that's going to necessarily, in the meantime, replace your former head of design, which again does yell out to me that if that's the feeling inside the culture, maybe design's just not really that valued. And again, it's going to be a pretty hard uphill battle to kind of change the way things are now. But that's kind of all I've got. Really kind of a Debbie Downer on that one. But definitely talk to your previous boss, get suggestions on how they would continue to tackle the problem from kind of your perspective. And sometimes it just becomes a conflict of personality, like whether we want to admit that stuff or not. So it may be that because you are not the head of the design department, but you're somebody who's doing the hard work, maybe, removing that tension between bosses will change things. But I would definitely focus on like showing the impact that your team is having, and then maybe having a conversation later down the line about dark patterns being everywhere. But that's a topic for a different discussion.
Yeah, I would say 2 things, right? Ensure that you are communicating ROI, what you're doing matters, why what you're doing will impact the product. The second thing I want to bring up is kind of a link to last week. It's when we talked about the person who really just couldn't do anything because higher ups kept saying, just do it like this. And they were kind of like, okay, well, I'm just going to do it because no matter how much I push back, they're not going to listen to me. And so I think that answer that we gave for that one applies a lot to this one too, where you can keep pushing. But if you truly have a person who is set in their ways, I don't know how much change they're going to go if, if they're trying to recommend dark patterns here. You might just need to do your best to work within those constraints and pick your battles. I think picking your battles is an incredibly good skill to have. If you know that users will benefit from one thing a lot less than another thing, well, maybe just let that one thing slide. And I know that's hard to do as a human factors practitioner or UX person. I think that is a very hard thing to do, to let go of something that is right, that will improve user performance. But if you need to do it to make sure that it's the sacrifice of the one for the good of the many, type of analogy here, you might need to do that. Pick your battles. I think everything that Blake said is good too. If you can meet with the person, if you have a good relationship with that previous boss, head of design, talk to them if you can. They're not getting paid for it, so good luck. But if they're passionate about it and they just left because of internal politics, you might be able to pick their ear about it. Other than that, I know it's a tough one. It's a very tough one. I'd say pick your battles and try to push back where you can. And if you're not seeing results just like your boss did, then I don't know. It's tough. There are a couple options. Look for another job, or push until they can't push back, or something breaks.
I think one last bit there, and I've experienced this before, where it's like you can't necessarily find a way to find an advocate in upper management. But what about the various cross-functional teams you work with? Do they see issues with the current design or issues with practices of what's going on inside of it? So sometimes if you can, find other people at your same level that see the issues, sometimes working together to, again, demonstrate ROI or demonstrate changes that could have, positive impacts for your product and ultimately your end user. That's another way to go about it if really going, up the hill to the PM level is just not working.
Yeah, good point. All right, last one here. I have minimal Excel skills. Microsoft Excel. Would you improve Excel skills or just go straight to R or Python? This is from Bubba Natep on User Experience. Blake, Sarah, I'm going to read the actual thing here. Spent my entire life learning design software. My Excel skills are okay, but I still have to ask some people sometimes when I need to go do some intermediary stuff. UX is trending towards needing data science skills. Would you ditch the Excel and go straight to R or Python? Blake, your reaction says it all. What should this person do?
You're gonna hate me. So we talked a little bit about this in the pre-show, so it definitely depends now because I've had more time to digest it and think about it. So I'll give you my gut answer was go to R or Python. I just had I thought it was interesting that was the jump to make. But also that's kind of where my interests lie. If you've heard the show before, if you've heard me talk about various, things that I'm interested in, coding is one of them. I'm pretty proficient in R at this point. And Python is something I'm picking up in the background of everything else that I'm doing. So yeah, I think there's a lot of utility potentially for R or Python. And I do agree with this person that in the UX world, there is a lot of a trend suddenly that you're seeing you see a lot of job posting for quantitative UX researchers. And there's not as many of those that are specialized in using tools like R and Python or SQL or whatever it may be. So that skill set it's not required, but I think over time it's going to kind of be a benefit to a lot of people to pick up those more heavy data analysis skills. Now, at the end of the day, the reason that it depends is because what are you doing in Excel? What's really the thing that you're having to go and ask people for help with, or what are you Googling to figure out? Because if it's simple things that you don't really need something as powerful as a programming language to do very deep statistical analyses or do, complex data visualizations or even build applications, then maybe Excel is the way to go. If you're just comparing things and you're writing kind of simplistic formulas, which do not let me confuse you. In Excel, you can write very complex formulas that I am horrible at doing. But I think the tool really, it just depends on what you need it for. And so looking into R and Python may tell you quickly that Excel is just the easier thing to use because you don't have to necessarily learn an entire programming language. There is an argument to be made that you have to learn the language of Excel and how it works and some of its nuances to get the most out of it. But I would say with stuff like Google Sheets or Microsoft Excel, which is readily available, there may be less of a learning curve for something like R or Python, but it all depends on where you want to take the skill set. And what do you actually need it for? If it's data science skills, probably R or Python down the road might be helpful. If it's just kind of, the basics of comparing, cataloging, and coming up with quick statistics from UX research, then maybe Excel is the way to go. But Nick, what's your perspective on Excel versus R or Python or Django or whatever?
See, I love when you and I have differing opinions on things because I'm gonna go ham on Excel, and the reason being is because Microsoft Excel is or the Microsoft Office suite, I should say, and this is the same reason why I recommend PowerPoint over many other prototyping tools, is because it's ubiquitous. It's basically in every business that exists, and those skills transfer to the Google suite and to other things. Depending on which one it is, there's varying levels of robustness. But for the same reason that it's ubiquitous, I think is you should go ham on it. Now, I think the thing is, you say it's simple, that's easy to learn, hard to master. I think that's a good way to put it. Where I think maybe R or Python are harder to learn. Relatively
All
speaking,
depends.
It does depend on your learning style. I will say that, like there's if you feel comfortable with coding languages, you might want to go investigate R or Python. But I will say there are going to be times in which you are operating in an environment where you need to share a document with other people. And unless those people have the skills in R or Python, they will not be able to replicate what you have done. You have then cornered yourself into a box where you are then responsible for all the work. And that could be what you want. And that's okay. But if you need to do a collaborative thing, it might be good to have those Excel skills, because like Blake said, you can write insanely complex analyses in Excel. I don't think the data viz is that bad. I mean, like,
you don't have as much control, but it's not bad. You can get
right.
away with a lot with Excel.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm team Excel. Blake is team R or Python. But just because we disagree on that, I think it largely depends on your learning style. It depends on your learning style. It depends on what you're comfortable with. It depends on what tools are available to you in your job or your research, right? I don't know. I'm team Excel. I could talk your ear off about Excel. Please reach out to me if you need more Excel advice. All right. I think, any other thoughts on that one, Blake?
No, I think we're good.
All right. Let's go ahead and get into this next part of the show, which is one more thing. It needs no introduction. This is just where we talk about one more thing. Blake, what's going on in your world, man?
I always think that the show is over and we get to this point and I can't even remember what my one more thing was. Not a whole lot going on in my little world at the moment, man. It's so I'm just at the moment kind of spending my evenings trying to finish up an application that I've been building for some, like, basically cataloging and tracking various guitar exercises that I picked up over the years. And I'm building a Electron wrapped in React based application. So that's really what I've been focusing on. Way less design than I would like, and much more of like, why does this thing not work? But so it's kind of ironic that Python came up, because that all of a sudden was an idea that I had, like, oh, maybe I should try and learn Python for this whole thing. And it was not what I needed to do. But anyway, So nothing much, man. I'm just enjoying a little bit of still trying to learn how to code, but making it interesting through some personal projects.
Go you with the personal enrichment. I also did some personal enrichment this last weekend.
Did you? What'd you do?
I feel like I should be a qualified electrician now.
Nice.
I did some shoddy electrician work. I'm not going to show you for a couple reasons. Let me describe what I did. So for listeners of the pod, I'm building a pod. Around me, I have a structure of wood that I will panel up soon, and I will put in a door right here. And one thing that I wanted to do, since all the electronics are kind of hidden behind this desk and between the wall and the desk, I wanted an easy way to turn off all non-essential functions. So this is the monitors, this is the keyboard and mouse, this is my microphone, my headset, my camera, basically everything that is not my computer. And so I've done some shoddy electrician work to where I've hooked up a switch over here on my right. It's going to be right by the door. I can flip the switch as I leave my little office pod in the night, and it turns everything off, saves electricity. It's great. I should be a fully qualified electrician now because I can do it. I actually did it using an extension cable, which is this is why I call it shoddy. So I took one of those power strips. I'm not an electrician. Don't recommend doing this. I took one of those power strips and I plugged every non-essential thing into it. And then I took an extension cable with the same gauge of cord, which is very important for carrying load. Very important. And then I ran it through a wall switch over here. And I basically interrupted that circuit so that way I could turn off that whole thing with one flip of the switch and turn it on with one flip of the switch and everything's on. And it works great. I love it. It's fantastic. And then work on the pod will continue. I've been slowly chipping away at this thing. I now have cardboard up over all sides. Not the ceiling yet, but this is basically the world's most advanced box for it, and I'm happy about that. So,
nice.
Until I can get some drywall in here and start actually patching it up, that's where I'm at.
Man? The cardboard will be awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's going to be it for today, everyone. Let us know what you guys think of the story this week. Have you used VR for learning? Let us know. You can hang out with us in our Slack or Discord. Get to us on any of our social channels. I do recommend following those for reasons that will become obvious next week. Visit our official website. Sign up for our newsletter to stay up to date with all the latest Human Factors news. If you like what you hear, you want to support the show, there's a couple things you can do. Leave us a 5-star review. That's free to you. Smash that like button wherever you're at. That helps other people find the show. Tell your friends about us. Consider supporting us on Patreon. That's a way that you can support us financially. That really does help keep the lights on. Literally, we use this thing and, Restream and all the video recording software, all that stuff. Anyway, all that stuff out of the way. I want to thank Mr. Blake Arnsdorff for being on the show today. Where can our listeners go and find you if they want to talk about VR learning, R, or Python?
You guys can definitely find resources for learning Python and a little bit of R in our Human Factors Cast Discord in the resources section. You can always find me in there at Blake, and you can find me across social media at Don't Panic UX.
As for me, I've been your host, Nick Roome. You can find me streaming on Twitch Mondays at 4 p.m. Pacific for office hours and across social media at Nick_Roome. Until next time, it depends. Okay, if you're hanging out with us, we are doing a post-show-ish here. I, skipped over half that outro. I don't know what happened.
It's fine. Everybody knows the deal by now. And if they don't, they can come back next week, and we got all the good bits.
Yeah, so if you're watching here, I will say one more time, if you are here joining us live, we'll give you all a heads up. We are doing a giveaway. That's what the heavy hints for following us on socials, all that stuff was for. We're doing a giveaway. We can't announce what it is yet. We will announce sometime this upcoming week before next week's show. So if you do follow us on any of these channels, if you join our Slack and Discord communities, you will be notified before everyone else. We'll have a couple extra days to enter and all that stuff. So just, it's a reward for tuning in to these live events. So thank you. All right, post-show time.
Posties. Real quick, shout out to, if I mess your name up, I apologize, Revo Chen for hopping in and giving us some comments during the show for Twitch. We didn't get to you because we were, recording the podcast, but it's awesome that you guys had actually set up a virtual environment all the way back in 2008 for students in their media institute. That's really cool.
I missed that. Thanks for bringing that up, Blake. Yeah, that's super cool. I wonder, Revo Chen, if you're still watching, what was the VE? What did you, what kind of VE was it? Was it just like a collaborative space? Was it like a learning space?
Oh, and Nick, this is just for you and I, but you should DM me later if you want to become famous, because I have a way to do that.
Ooh.
In case you wanted to know.
Is it this comment right here? Is it this one?
It could be.
Want to become famous?
I knew
not even gonna give them the time of day.
It just makes me laugh every time I see one.
Every time.
If I want to become famous, I'm probably not sitting around talking about a psychology offshoot topic. I don't think that's what I'm doing.
A very niche podcast. Yeah, I want to become famous by talking about human factors. Let's be honest.
Super famous. What is this? This is 216. Excellent.
If anybody watching knows any good giveaway websites that allows you to plug into other things like follow us on Twitch, follow us on Instagram, follow these other people on Instagram and Twitter and all that stuff. If you know any good ones that have a free option, let us know. We're looking into options right now. I'm going to try to get that set up sooner than later. Hopefully I'll have it out this weekend.
Excellent.
Cool. I am so geeked to talk about.
We haven't told anybody what we're giving away. Is that right?
No. Yeah, we are not talking about what we're giving away. I'm very geeked to talk about it because, like I said, I tried the product. Can I say the product? I tried it earlier today, and it was very exciting.
Nice.
I cannot tell you. It has been so long since I've geeked out that much about something. I was sitting here giggling to myself while I was doing it, and I was typing in the lab as I was doing it. I was, wow, this is great! This is awesome.
Well, if you want to giggle like Nick, tune in next week or tune in through our social media.
I don't know. I don't know if other people will be as geeked about it as I am. It's fine if you're not. I just found it very enjoyable, but I'm also hard to please, so I don't know.
Yeah, that's how you know it's good, if Nick is impressed.
Okay. Wow, that was a good show. I liked that. Super interesting topic.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. I'm telling you, I wish that I could have learned physics in VR. I would have been way better off. Just being able to see some of the stuff in action.
Yeah. Let's talk about a physics application, right? Like, this is the post show, so I feel like people who are sticking around should get rewarded for it. What are you thinking that might look like, right? Like, somebody because this is my interpretation. Somebody in a VR environment, maybe you have an equation in front of you that, like terminal velocity or something, and you drop something from a height, and maybe you have blown yourself up to, giant man sizes, to where you can see the scale of everything. Maybe you have like an airplane up here, and somebody jumping out of that airplane, and they're like hitting terminal velocity as they go down, and maybe the equation updates as something happens in that virtual environment. I don't know. That's how I'm thinking about physics. Or maybe you have some interactive element where you manipulate an object, drop it, and actually see, how things work.
I mean, that's kind of what I was thinking, because the hardest thing for me in physics was understanding across the different variables that you could have in whatever various formulas, what happened when you change them. And so it wasn't until like I either had to graph and draw a bunch of things, or see, my tutor or teacher draw stuff and how things changed as you manipulated various parts of an equation. And so doing something like what you talked about, like where you have the capability to drop the ball from a different height or drop stuff at different mass and see how it kind of interacts in the world, could really, I think, have a pretty powerful effect on people's ability to basically solidify what it is they're learning, and then seeing an actual application of it versus just a lot of like theoretical physics that can be hard to grasp, or for me, it was never something very easy to understand. So yeah, like going through basically almost going through kind of like your textbook, but having it be much more illustrated and interactive, and let you kind of mess with some of those, very traditional, thermodynamics problems or physics problems or whatever it may be, or those two trains passing in the night, that when will train A intersect with train B type of thing. Yeah. There could just be a lot of fun ways to visualize that stuff.
I was about to say mathematics would be a no-brainer of a solution, because you have that exact example, two trains. You have word problems that can be then visualized. You have...
Yeah, that would have been amazing. Because for people that have not heard me say it on the show before, I have like a little bit of low-key dyslexia. So word problems in mathematics were very, very hard for me. Math was never my strong suit until I got much older and was into more advanced like calculus and stuff like that. But like word problems and early math, it was a nightmare. So being able to like visualize some of that stuff may have taken some of the strain of reading and interpreting things correctly and then applying it mathematically off of like me as a kind of young learner.
Yeah, well, you do a fantastic job of reading the blurbs every week, Blake. So I'm super proud of you.
I almost fell off my chair because I couldn't get through the first sentence today.
I'm super proud of you.
Oh, so funny. Too funny.
I'm proud of you. Yeah, I think those could be cool applications. I also think, we talked about it on the show, but training is obviously another really
We're
important
already,
application.
seeing that happen, right?
Yeah, with surgeons and stuff, some of these higher consequence professions where getting it wrong means a lot, But I mean, I can also see it being used for, once it becomes more ubiquitous, once VR, everyone has a headset they can throw on, or every company has a training headset that they can afford to let people use. I think it could be more ubiquitous. It could be, as simple as like, it seriously could be used for like cashiering, right? You have somebody grabbing virtual objects, looking for a barcode, scanning it, and putting it in a bag, all in a virtual environment. And it's just to get them comfortable with it before you put them in front of customers. For somebody who, like for me, the first time I ever cashiered, it was very nerve-wracking because despite me being on a podcast every week, I'm fairly introverted, and social situations stress me out. And so, like, being a cashier in that example was really, it's a struggle for me. So, being able to do it in VR where you don't necessarily have to talk with somebody, but you're just getting the movements down. So that way you can put your energy towards talking to the customer once you're in the actual environment, and the other thing becomes second nature. I don't know. That's kind of big, right?
Yeah, trying to pick up all of the skills and then on top of it deal with the social complexities of it. That can't be easy to learn and pick up fast.
I also wonder, and this is a little bit of a stretch, but like, what if someday, there's like virtual testing? What if the DMV someday goes, okay, you're going to do a behind the wheel test at home?
Thank goodness. All right.
Like,
parallel park at home.
Like, right? Like, or you go to some center that has it, if you don't have a car to borrow, you are no longer in an environment where you are potentially putting people in risk, maybe the DMV, and this is very hopeful, but maybe the DMV someday will have training pods that people can go into, and actually learn how to drive.
Well, it's really funny that the DMV's online experience, this is an interesting point to me anyway, is the visualizations of it. They're great. They've done a really good job. The like UX design portion of it needs a fair amount of work because it's not streamlined. There's a lot of weird stuff going on interaction wise, but the more and more that the baseline government starts putting into design, I could imagine something like that being part of their website. If let's say, I don't know, what do you think? 10, 15 years, like VR headsets are a ubiquitous item in people's homes. Something
They've
like
been
that.
saying that for
really
10, 15
awesome.
years,
Yeah, I have no idea. So I would say that kind of stuff, my guess is that AR will be much more accessible faster. But VR will be really close behind it because of the immersive aspects of it. So I would say in the 5 to 10 year range, we'll have really interesting products in home for everybody to use. The 15 years is more of like let your local government catch up to, paying for all that kind of stuff and developing all those, online platform bits that they would need to support something like that.
Maybe this is just a totally bad application because if you think about the way cars are going in the next 15 years, they might be all autonomous and no one needs a driver's license.
Yeah, we
anymore.
don't need that stuff. It's
So,
fine.
But
That would be great.
It would
cut
be.
out the middle person.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking of other applications. So like I talked about the cashiering, you might be able to do it for like low level skill, like operating a forklift, maybe,
Yeah.
because there's plenty of companies that need that, right, to move stock from one place to another. And so if you have somebody with that skill set, then you can move them over, and to train them up quickly and efficiently, they could get in a virtual environment, train on one of those forklifts and know exactly what to do. Could have something like, although robots are taking over those jobs, so I don't know. Same problem with the DMV.
I think one that I've used in kind of like early stages in job interviews is I've been really interested. I've talked about it on the show a couple of times now, annoyingly, of like developing applications to help you learn guitar theory faster or provide you with like exercises you can continue going back and forth to. And the more that I've gotten in the headspace of thinking about AR and more so VR, because I feel like I have a better sense of what this would look like, is providing tools that help you basically have a virtual instructor, but also allow you to help visualize your fretboard, like when you're learning new modes, what that looks like, and then kind of like scaling it over time. But also too, if you changed, to drop tunings outside of E standard, what does that do to all the notes that you already know, and how does that move things around for you?
Right.
And then same thing for learning new techniques like hammer-ons or sweep picking or any of that kind of stuff, like showing you, literally letting you watch something from your perspective on how it should be done and seeing if you can match that kind of playing and stuff like that. So I think learning a lot of musical skills for across instruments can be really cool in VR.
That's a great point, because so when I was a senior in high school, my senior project was to learn a song on the piano, and that's kind of what I chose. And so I was working with my the pianist for the choir at the time, and I told her the most effective way for me to learn is to see how you do it and try to mimic those motions, right? I could read the music, I could do the motions, but I couldn't do them at the same time. And until I could get one and match it with the other, that was my learning style, right? Is to perform it with my fingers, and then I'm gonna have to go. I'll be right back.
Have at it, man. So like along the same lines of some of the stuff that Nick was talking about, that's like a goal I've had for myself in playing guitar over the past couple of years more seriously again, is there's an artist or a band that I listen to called Intervals, and it's really a one-man show. So it's a guy named Aaron Marshall. So I've been trying to learn a lot of his stuff, and something that's become very popular, I think, across most genres, but metal's the one that I pay the most attention to. And so a lot of artists release guitar playthroughs and then separately drum playthroughs and even bass playthroughs and stuff like that. And so what Nick was talking about of being able to from a rudimentary perspective, I can read music. I can definitely read a guitar tab. And then I can also kind of understand some of the phrasing, but there's something about watching and knowing which kind of patterns people are using with their hands, how they're kind of pulling off some of the more advanced techniques like hammer-offs or hammer-ons, hammer-offs and trills and things like that. And then knowing the things they need to practice has really been beneficial from watching and seeing it on top of being able to then read it. Because I would imagine what Nick was going to say is that over time he was able to get a little bit more versed visually, like what to do on the piano. Same thing that I've done with the guitar, watching people play.
Exactly that. Yeah. Sorry about that. Emergency. So I'm building the pod right outside the kitchen. And in the kitchen, there is a stove.
Ooh.
And in the kitchen with the stove, there's a curious toddler who likes to climb things. And that's what that crash was. So,
oh, goodness.
There you go. Jeez. Post show. This is the kind of fun stuff that you get in the post show.
Absolutely. Can't go wrong.
Oh, man. All right. I'm going to keep looking for a giveaway tool. Man, I'm really excited. I'm really excited about this. And I know we keep talking about, I do know that I'm being a little annoying with the coyness, but I promise you it is cool. It is very cool. It is so cool. And it just kind of happened to us kind of last minute. So still figuring some things out, but very cool stuff.
Absolutely. One thing I would really encourage everybody to do, especially if you're hanging out with us and you hung out with us through the podcast and you heard about the story, rewatching the video from this story is just kind of incredible, because for me, this is a lot of the stuff that I thought about early in my psychology career, because I did want to have a career in neuroscience at some point. And so going through and seeing these different projections of how the brain works and like the outcomes that it has, like basically from your visual perception system, is a lot of fun to watch. So if you're interested in any of that in any way, definitely check out the link for the original article that has the video that's attached to it.
Yeah.
It's a really cool take on how VR can be.
I think I could actually share that while we're
Do
sitting
it!
here. I don't know if I could have shared it
while we were
I
live.
still don't know if I could share. I mean, it's publicly available, right? So I can share that stuff, right?
I don't know.
I don't know what the rules are on sharing. I'm going to show this. If we get kicked off one of these social platforms, you know why. But
just show it, but mute it. That's
I'm going to mute it. Yeah. But I will show it here. Hang on, let me pull up my screen. We have fun music going on and commentary anyway, so we'll take care of that part for you. Let's see here. I am put my screen just one moment while I get this set up, and we should be able to watch this fun animation. So I think it's there. We got it. Let's see. We'll bring this up to full screen, just like so. Oh, I'm gonna change our layout real quick. No, not that. I don't like that. Maybe this one. I got the thing in my face. We'll do that. How about that?
You
okay.
are the Human Factors cast.
All right, we're gonna play this. So this is a visualization, and like I said, the little description, or sorry, the little visualization is what we used for the thumbnail of this video. But you can see here, I'm gonna talk through this. You can see here that we're in VR. This is from the perspective of a headset. We're looking at a screen and a brain processing the images on that screen, and how the things on that screen are then read by the eyes, and how that information is transferred into the occipital lobe. I'm watching this at like 0.5 speed because I was trying to get a screenshot earlier, but I think it's also good
it makes
for
sense.
this. Yeah. So you can see here, as we're approaching the brain from the front, we're looking at these eyes. You can see the image is reversed and upside down in these eyes. And then now we're navigating past the nerves so we can see what information is passed to which parts of the brain. And you can see things are labeled, like the optic nerve, the optic chiasm, the optic tract, the LGN. And so you can see where all this information is going and what's processing it. Again, this is meant to communicate some of these harder to understand concepts, or harder to see concepts when you try to illustrate it in a textbook, or when you try to look at it on a model. We're looking at a 3D representation of this thing, and we're actually able to get in and navigate through it and see how things happen in real time as the image changes or anything like that. So I think this is a great way to communicate some of these concepts here. Blake, any comments on this as we're watching the video? I try to talk through it the best I could for the patrons who are listening only. But
that's right. I think one of the beautiful things about what we just went through, and Nick did an awesome job with the narration, but it's the so to describe it a little bit more in terms of what we see at the end there, you're actually looking at like a TV screen almost is what it looks like, or a monitor.
Yeah.
And so Nick described basically how that input that you're seeing in front of you, this monitor that's got various colors and imagery on it, how it ends up coming in through your eyeballs, and the fact that it's, upside down and being interpreted through your entire brain. But then we get to see kind of at the very end, once we get to the backside of the brain, how it comes out and looks the way that we expect it to, right side up, with all the information being interpreted. But you bring up a good point, because I remember like in a lot of my neurobiology classes having to look through cuts of the brain at various, like in various different planes, head on, sagittal, whatever. And then you would have to remember these various sections of the brain, what they did and all that kind of stuff. But with something like this, it almost surprises me that we're not seeing more content-based outcomes from this particular kind of stuff. Because I would imagine that the fact that it's more interactive, you're able to gather in a lot more information because you're experiencing it directly and looking around and things like that. I would imagine that it could solidify the knowledge pretty well in terms of what different parts of the brain are, what the names are, where they are, how they function,
how they interplay.
Yeah, there you go.
That's the thing that I always struggled with, right? I could name the parts, I could understand roughly the functions, but understanding what part happened when, the workflow of everything, that would have been really great to see in a virtual environment. I think that's kind of the benefit to having it in a VE, where you can see these animations play out. But and we've seen, or at least in my classes, they would play like videos or VHS tapes or whatever of like really old Nova videos of that have been written over a million times. Old Nova videos that would show how these things work, and it's the best illustration that we have because it was 3D animated. It was paid for, by Advanced Research, and so to have those was helpful. But then to actually be able to get in there, pause, scrub time left and right as you're maneuvering around this object, that would be insanely useful, because it's possible that there are two things happening at the same time, right? Like, if you imagine the structure of a neuron, and you have, like, I think this for a neuron and the processes that happen within a neuron would be incredibly useful, because then you extrapolate that to the brain. But you have, neurotransmitters coming in, hitting the receptors, and then sending the signal down the axon. All that stuff happening. I can imagine this very useful for something like biology too, where you have, certain cellular structures that perform certain tasks, and having those illustrated in real time and being able to scrub back and forth and slice through several different layers to see what's going on. Lots of application, I think, in particularly biology, biopsych, for these biological functions. But then, like Katie said, in our Slack about other things that are not very easily done, like going to a different planet, asteroids. What else did she say?
One thing that strikes me about this whole if we were really to move to VR or even like more computer-based learning, like away from textbooks and things like that, is it almost strikes me as something that's a little more sustainable as a learning tool. Like, you're not necessarily, like, let's say for a textbook, you have to rewrite a bunch of stuff every other iteration, which could be costly. It
could be for the money.
Yep, could be for the money. But let's say something like the brain. Like, the amount of things that I remember reading, even as an undergraduate and then in graduate school, they were vastly different because the research was continually going on. And we were learning more from a neurochemistry and neuroscience perspective about how the brain potentially worked and yada yada. Updating a textbook or keeping it up to date is nearly impossible, especially if it's a field that's growing so fast. Updating animations and models has potential to be a much more sustainable medium for changing things or making updates and then releasing them, in real time. Especially, again, if we're using technology that's accessible or it's open sourced or whatever it may be. So there's a lot of strange offshoots, like always, when you introduce new technologies into different domains. I think learning has a lot of positive ones.
I agree. I don't know. Should we cut this post show here a little short? I know we usually go till 30 after, but
no, let's cut it. I need to go take care of the old animal. I know you got things going on yourself.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. If you've been hanging out with us, appreciate the booping the like button one last time to let other people help find this content, because people like you will hopefully will be shown things like this, and will help other people find the content, help the community grow, and all that stuff. Anyway, really appreciate you hanging out with me, Blake. We will talk later. Let's talk via Discord. And if you're listening, you should join our Discord.
Please do. Join the Discord, learn Python and R, or learn Excel tips from the master.
Or reach out to me for Excel tips. Hot Excel action. Wait, hot Excel summer? What is it? I don't know.
Hot Excel tips.
All right. I think that's as good a place as any to stop for the night.
I think so.
All right.